Kaakibat ng layunin naming matugunan ang mga suliraning may kinalaman sa mental health, kabilang sa mga benepisyaryo ng podcast na ito ay ang Youth for Mental Health Coalition. Ang Youth for Mental Health Coalition ay samahan ng mga organisasyong, estudyante at kabataan na naghahangad na paunlarin ang kamalayan ng bansa sa mga isyong pang-mental health. Ang unang SEC-registered na non-profit organization pang-mental health sa Pilipinas, malawak ang sakop ng kanilang nagawa laban sa krisis at stigma ng mental health. Kagaya ng tumulong sila sa pagtitipon ng suporta at paglilikha mismo ng Philippine Mental Health Act.
Para makatulong sa kanilang mga programa tulad ng mga educational discussions, forums at pag-institutionalize ng usapin ng mental health sa lipunan, maaring mabigay ng donasyon sa GCash account ni Hazel Grace Romero sa numerong 0995-465-6448 o di kaya sa kanyang BPI account na may numerong 981-941-3131. Tatanggap po kami ng donasyon hanggang sa ika-2 ng Mayo 2021 at ang mga numero na banggit ay makikita sa inyong mga screen. Magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. Welcome, good morning to everybody watching the first episode of Pahinging, a mental health video podcast series under Power Up Team 6.
Yes, magandang umaga sa ating lahat. So for our first episode, we're going to talk about something very relatable to all of us here. We're all students here. We're all experiencing it. We're going to talk about online classes. And with that, we're going to start. Ako si Sean Latore.
At ako naman si Zanella Baharias.
At ito ang Pahinging, isang serye ng mental health video podcast na nagnanais makatulong sa mga nakakaranas ng mental stress ngayong pandemya. So, good morning again to our listeners and viewers.
Magandang umaga sa inyo lahat. Ang pamagat ng episode natin ngayon ay A Day at a Time, Mentally Coping with Online Classes. And I think, Sean, of course, as students, this is something that we've gone through. But also, this is very important as well, not just for students, but also for educators and for people contacting these students, diba? So, very important ito.
Tama. Especially now na parang sobrang bigat ng online classes, sobrang bigat ng semester natin ngayon, right? So, alam naman natin no, na napakahirap ng pag-aaral sa isang remote setup, lalo na nasa gitna tayo ng isang health crisis at economic crisis. So, kaya naman our speaker will discuss kung ano ba yung mga salik or factors ng remote learning na nakakadagdag sa stress at kung paano natin maaalagaan ang ating mental health sa kabila ng lahat ng ito.
Ang episode na ito ay inihahandog ng Power Up Team 6, isang inisyatibo ng Rise for Education, UP Diliman. This episode is also co-presented by Changemakers Philippines, Sinagdiwa Volunteers for Mental Health, and Mental Health Awareness. It was created in cooperation with the We Mind PH, Alliance of Public Health Advocates, City of Mandaluyong Science High School Supreme Student Government, the Philippine School, Dubai Senior High School Student Council, Yugto Philippines, and Likas Bayan Organization Incorporated. And very special thanks to Aksyon ng Kabataan Organization.
Okay, so our speaker for this episode, for our very first episode, ay isang guidance counselor sa Ateneo de Manila Junior High School. Mr. Carlo P. Carlon is a licensed teacher and guidance counselor from the Ateneo de Manila Junior High School, and he graduated with a bachelor's degree in AB Philosophy from St. Vincent Seminary College in Quezon City. He then pursued his master's in guidance counseling at the Ateneo de Manila University and Miriam College, where he graduated in 2012. He is now in his 19th year as a guidance counselor, currently serving as the guidance coordinator of the Ateneo de Manila Junior High School Guidance Program. As a guidance counselor in Ateneo, he has organized and conducted several talks about cyberbullying, internet addiction, and gaming, which became special programs of the guidance department. In 2019, Mr. Carlon was instrumental in the foundation of the Philippine Guidance and Counseling Association, or PGCA Rizal chapter. He was elected as the first president of PGCA Rizal and is currently leading the chapter. He is also one of the reviewers of the PGCA Rizal board exam review sessions. Last March 17, 2020, he founded the Lend a Bike project to help frontliners continue working in the absence of public transport due to the enhanced community quarantine. Through his efforts, he was able to provide and donate more than 400 bikes to health workers and frontliners in NCR, Rizal, Davao, and other areas of the country. As a result, he was recognized as one of the Philippines' best citizens by DZRJ 810 AM, Voice of the Philippines Radio. He is happily married to Dr. Jade and is a father of two wonderful boys, Kaji and Kenji. Ipinakikilala namin sa Mr. Carlo P. Carlo. So good morning po, sir. Hello po.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to your podcast.
Thank you so much for spending your time with us, sir. And it's wonderful also because you also have children who are definitely going through online classes right now as well. Uh, and I think your knowledge is incredibly important to people who are watching our podcast today. So I think it's important that we start with our first question regarding mental health during this pandemic.
Yes, so I think we're ready, sir. Okay. So
Yeah.
for our first question, ano-ano ang mga nararamdaman, iniisip at nagagawa ng isang tao na nagpapakitang nakararanas siya ng mental stress sa ilalim ng remote setup natin ngayon?
All right. Yung manifestations naman ay yung manifestations ng stress basically is it's whether due to online setup that we have right now or kahit yung before pandemic ay pareho lang naman yung mga pinapakitang signs no pag na-stress ang isang tao. But before I enumerate the symptoms or the signs of stress, I would just like to point out first that um, stress in general is not bad. No? Lahat tayo ay una nakakaramdam ng stress. And stress actually is our body's coping mechanism. No? Um, example, pag merong danger, no? If we sense danger, our body, di ba, sends a signal. So, nai-stress tayo. And because of that, we do something to protect ourselves. We defend ourselves, no, to survive. So one thing for the stress, no, yung function niya is for survival. Ang problema lang pag nasosobrahan yung stress sa atin. Okay? So ano yung mga signs that a person is under stress, no, whether you are in an online setup or in a normal situation, no? Basically, lagi yan merong change of behavior sa isang tao. Diba? For example, dati naman okay yung sleeping patterns mo, di ba? You can sleep very well. Pero pag na-stress ka na, either hindi ka na natutulog or sobra naman yung tulog mo. Tulog ka na lang ng tulog. That could be one, no? Another one would be yung eating habits, eating patterns. Dati ay magana ka naman kumain. Pero pag nag-stress ka, dalawang klase din. Pwedeng hindi ka nakakain, ayaw mo nang kumain. Or meron tayong tinatawag, di ba, na stress eating. May iba naman, to cope with the stress, ay kain ng kain. And eventually, nagpo-cause ito ng, obesity and other mga sakit, no? Because of obesity, because of overeating. Ano pa ba yung ibang mga signs? Feelings of fear, of anger, yung mga tipong konting bagay lang, naiirite ka na kaagad, feelings of sadness for no reason at all, feeling of numbness, of frustration, you worry about a lot of things, there is a change in yung appetite, in your desires, parang dati gustong-gusto mong mag-engage sa mga activities na to, you love doing something, tapos eventually because of stress, nawalan ka na ng gana. So mga signs. Aside from difficulty having or aside from difficulty sleeping, you begin to have nightmares. No? May mga taong gano'n na nagigising na lang bigla kasi masasama yung panaginip nila or yung tinatawag natin sa Filipino na binabangungot sila. Some would have worsening of chronic problems. May mga sakit na sila. For example, high blood pressure. Lalong lumalala. May mga there will be cases of worsening of mental health conditions, no? Meron na silang mga sabihin natin like anxiety disorders or itong mga ibang disorders, no, na related to our mental health, lalo itong na-enhance sa stress, no? And other signs to watch out also would be increased use of alcohol, ng paninigarilyo, or even worse would be going into drugs, no? So karamihan nito ay mga signs na ang isang tao ay nai-stress. Again, whether in a normal situation or even in a situation like we have right now na online tayo.
Thank you, sir. And I think it's also important to know, syempre, the how it manifests, diba? And it's quite, and everyone goes through it,
Right.
definitely. And I think also, sir, na it's important to have in mind, if because of all these manifestations of different manifestations of stress, what can students do? What are the things that they can do to mitigate the effects of stress, to mitigate feeling burned out from remote learning?
All right. Actually, a lot of things can be done by students, by individuals na hindi lang estudyante pag na-stress ka. Number one, I think, would be first take care of your body, no? Because the manifestations will always be evident. It can be seen in our body. So number one, take care of your body. How do we take care of our body? I think basic yan. Number one, di ba? Try to sleep. Get plenty of sleep, no? Ang ina-advise sa atin is around 6 to 8 hours, di ba? I don't know, yung mga estudyante ngayon kung nakakatulog pa ng 6 to 8 hours. So, yun, isa yun. So, kung hindi ka na natutulog, if you only have like 2 to 4 hours of sleep, your productivity will be affected, no? Kahit hindi estudyante, kahit ako, pag kulang ako sa tulog, di ba? Parang irritable ka, you will not be productive kasi inaantok ka, no? So, that's very basic. Have enough sleep. Tapos, you have to eat healthy food, no? Balance na diet. Hindi pwedeng kakain ka ng puro fast food lang, no? Hindi pwedeng ganoon. Hindi pwedeng inom ka ng inom ng soda, no? Talagang pati yung sugar mo maapektuhan yan. And for example, in my case, I'm diabetic. You will know the effects of high sugar, no? When you are like diabetic, or kung hindi man diabetic, pag mataas ang sugar mo, naapektuhan yung mood kasi ng tao eh. No? So, minsan di mo alam na bakit irritable ka. Yung pala ay maliban sa kulang sa tulog, mataas ang sugar level mo. No? So, you need to be careful with what you eat because it will affect your mood. And then, I think very, very important is to have exercise. Alam kong mahirap sa mga estudyante siguro, lalo sa panahon ngayon na mag-exercise. No? Lalo ngayon na bawal lumabas. For example, sa case ko kasi ay bike, na nagbabike ako. So, but the past 2 weeks, tumigil muna akong lumabas. But I had to do something about it kasi gusto ko magbike. So I had to set up a trainer inside my house. No? Doon ako nagbabike. Or at least you walk around kahit dun sa labas ng bahay ninyo. Kung pwede, if you're in a village, pwede naman siguro kang maglakad-lakad doon. No? In the absence of allowed sports like probably basketball and other sports, no? Basta ang importante ay kumilos ka. Magkikilos ka, kailangan pagpawisan ka, no? Kasi we know, no, it's a fact na when you exercise, our body releases what we call the happy hormones, di ba? Endorphin ba? So, yun, wala yatang nag-exercise na malungkot because of that. No? There's a chemical reaction to it eh. So the more you exercise, the more that you become, cheerful, you become happy. Kasi nga may nangyayari sa katawan natin which is chemical. So my explanation dyan. Kung maiiwasan yung paggamit ng sigarilyo, maiiwasan ang paggamit ng alcohol, maiiwasan yung pag-inom ng maraming kape, no? Ako mahilig din ako sa kape, pero 'di ba? For example, at night mga around 11 nagkakape pa ako. It will affect my sleeping. Minsan alauna na, madaling araw hindi pa ako matulog kasi nagkape ako, no? So mga ganung bagay. And there is for me, I teach this to my students, no, that even in the classroom when you are stressed out or even outside of the classroom, kahit saan pwede mong magawa. Very basic lang ito, no? Yung deep na breathing na gagawin mo lang. So pag, di ba, usually pag na-stress tayo, pag tensyonado tayo, yung irritable ka, nanginginig ka, no, or aligaga ka, no. Ang pwede nating gawin doon ay very simple lang, no. Pag nakakaramdam ka ng ganun is start, take deep breathing, no. Hinga lang ng malalim, inhale, exhale. eventually mapapansin mo na kumakalma ka. No? Kahit ako ngayon ginagawa ko yan, for example, while lining up, kahit hindi ka stress, maganda yung nag-exercise ka ng deep na breathing. Much more when you are stressed. Kasi kakalma yung mga nerves mo niyan pag nagkakaroon ng oxygen yung ating mga nerves. No? So, the medical people would have an explanation to it, but basically, it provides us, sabi nila, oxygen to our nerves, sa ating mga veins, and it causes relaxation sa katawan natin. So ito yung mga bagay na pwede natin gawin. Kung na-stress ka na, kaysa magwala ka, start lang. Inhale, exhale lang ng malalim. 20, 30 times ulit-ulitin mo. Mararamdaman mo na lang, kumakalma ka na. Okay? Other things that we can do, kasi for example, at this point, yung too much na social media, no, watching the news right now will make you stressed, at saka walang gana talaga pag nakita mo yung mga balita. So one thing that you can do is try to limit your access to the news. No, I'm not saying that you do not watch the news, kailangan pa rin nating manood, pero baka pwedeng, like ako for example, ang ginagawa ko, I just watch yung meron sa YouTube, kasi for example yung Rappler, meron silang parang summary na of the news yesterday. So ginagawa ko early in the morning, instead of watching yung mga mahabang newscast, yun lang 5 minutes or 6 minutes of what happened yesterday. Okay na ako. Alam ko na, parang may summary siya. So one thing that you can do is yun, limit yung access sa balita, kasi hindi magandang balita ngayon. Second would be, limit also your access to social media. Kasi dami nating nababasang hindi maganda, no? Mga negative in social media, and it affects our mood, it affects our well-being. No? So, isa yun, try to limit your access to social media. Third would be, nabanggit ko kanina, aside from exercise, is try to unwind. No? Take time to unwind. Different people would have different ways of unwinding. No? Like, ako, I'm an extrovert. Mas gusto ko lumabas. Mas gusto kong mag-exercise. The introvert probably would love sit in a corner and then read or watch TV or just simply rest. No? Mga bagay na ganun. Kung ano yung para sa'yo ay paraan na marerelax ka, gawin mo yun. And finally, sa akin, very important at this point in time, pag na-stress ka, you try to connect with other people. When I say connect with other people, you can talk to your classmates, no? Yung usapan na hindi naman probably school-related, anything na pwede niyong pag-usapan, makaka-relax yun. Pangalawa, you try to connect with adults, no? Lalo kung people who can be of help. For example, in school, baka may access kayo sa guidance office ninyo. You talk to your teachers, you talk to your counselors kung may mga concern kayo. Kasi iba yung, di ba yung feeling na na-unburden mo yung nararamdaman mo sa loob. Not necessarily that you are looking for a solution. The very act of just sharing it to somebody else will unburden what you're feeling. Maganda yung mangyayari sa'yo. And then, kung kaya, if you have a community, for example, di ba in a church, kung meron kayong ganon, or meron kang group of friends, you try to connect with them because it will help. No? I think those are some basic and some mga pwedeng magawa natin whenever we are feeling the stress already.
Thank you for that, sir. It's interesting kasi about the coffee, sir. Ako sobrang I love coffee. I think I'm a big coffee girl. And ako rin po, I'm not sure, Sean, I'm not sure if you also drink coffee late at night. But for me, would you would you suggest, sir, drinking melatonin also at night if we have difficulty sleeping, for instance?
Ako naman, very basic is before you drink anything, especially meds, you try to consult a doctor first. Because they will be in the position to first assess you kung kailangan mo. Pangalawa, baka may mga allergies ka, di ba? Bigla kang uminom, ay magka-problema ka. Pangatlo, like for example, in my case na I have diabetes and other, mga sakit-sakit na pag nagkakaedad ka, hindi ka pwedeng basta uminom na lang ng meds. So, if you need it, ako okay lang, but try to consult a doctor first.
Okay, so thank you, sir. That's actually really helpful. That's a lot of information and that's a lot of tips. No, actually, struggle ng karamihan ng mga students ngayon, especially ngayong online classes, is yung makahanap ng ways to cope with the remote learning setup, yung makahanap ng ways to unwind,
Right.
makahanap ng time to actually do some exercise or do something na labas sa academics. No? And speaking of academics, speaking of face-to-face, remote learning classes, no, considering na magkaiba naman talaga yung remote learning setup natin ngayon sa face-to-face classes, no, um, how do you think students should measure their productiveness or how should they measure kung gaano sila ka-productive?
All right. Um, yeah, that's right. No, it's really a challenge not only for the students but even for the teachers right now to measure the productivity of students. But for me, no, sa akin I would just probably ask myself, no, eto lang yun basic. Are you learning something or are you simply just complying, submitting the requirements, no, for compliance? Kasi it happens, di ba? You can submit a lot of the requirements, you can get a high grade, but you didn't learn anything. And it's happening right now. Ang dami kong estudyante nakakausap, not only in our school, but in other schools, based on seminars that I give to teachers, no? Na yun ang feedback ng mga estudyante na parang tambak yung kanilang homework, tambak yung kanilang gagawin. And because of that, because they have to meet the deadlines, they just have to do it minsan without thinking about it. Just have to do it and submit it. So ang tanong lagi doon, okay, nakapag-submit ka nga, but have you learned or did you learn something from the exercise? Sa akin, that will be the ultimate measure of your productivity. May natutunan ka ba or wala? Kasi kung walang natutunan, kahit nakapag-submit ka dyan, para sa akin, hindi productive yung nangyari sa'yo.
Thank you, sir. Actually, that's a very tough question to answer for a lot of students. Ikaw ba, Sandy, may natututunan ka ba sa online classes so far?
I try my best. Sinusubukan ko. I try my best to do that. But of course, I think it's also important to recognize that there are people who don't have the right resources for this online setup as well. And so it's important na we learn from them. And so, of course, we already talked also about, what one should do when one is feeling mentally stressed out by this remote learning setup. We also talked about productivity in the remote learning setup, sir. And so I think also one of the things that I want to ask, sir, is how will you know the difference between that demarcation between, oh, I'm just learning, and oh, I'm just complying, or oh, I'm actually learning something from class.
Well, at the moment, diba? Kasi this is the first time that's happening, not only to us, no? It's a worldwide phenomenon in education na we are having an online setup at the moment because of the pandemic. Honestly, sa ngayon, baka hindi pa natin kasi masabi if you've learned something or not. No? Because for me, I believe you learn something when you're able to apply it in real life situations. Diba? Siguro ang tanong dyan at makakapagpatunay lang na may natutunan ka, pag hiningi na ng pagkakataon, either next year, next school year, yung natutunan mo ay ma-apply sa mga real life situations, or 'di ba, like in college may mga subjects na tinatawag natin mga prerequisite, 'di ba? You cannot go to like this subject without taking first this subject. Sa akin, on practical terms 'yun. Pag pumunta ka dun sa pangalawang subject na required yung previous subject at wala kang natutunan, sa akin isang sign yun na yun nga, yung productivity mo is affected. But honestly, in terms of assessment at the moment, mukhang mahirap mag-assess ngayon using the usual assessment tools that we used during the pre-pandemic na setup, di ba? Usually, mga assessment tools lang naman natin would be, di ba, quizzes, mga ganon. Right now kasi hindi mo na masasabi yun kahit nag-quiz ka kasi nasa bahay lang yan. It's a different thing, no, when you are inside the classroom. So it's happening in fact in public schools right now na yung mga learning modules na nangyayari ngayon, yung, di ba, they're answering learning modules. Marami yung kumakalat na balita na yung mga bata ay hindi ginagawa nila. Ang ibang gumagawa either yung parents nila or in private schools na kayang mag-tutor, yung mga tutors nila. No? So, kasi naghahabol sila nung, yun nga, gusto nilang magkaroon ng mataas na grado. Naghahabol sila ng honors. May joke nga na nabasa ako dati sa Facebook, sabi ng isang magulang, ito na nga yung pagkakataon nila na makapag-honors yung anak nila, kaya gagawin nila lahat ngayon, di ba? Which is true, di ba? Which is true. But my point is yun nga, an assessment right now, for me, will not be, sabihin natin 100% indicative of what a person learns. Kasi nga, hindi natin alam talaga kung siya bang sumagot nun. So, I think going back to the question, mahirap sagutin sa ngayon, except that I would say na you've learned something if you will be able to use it, apply it in a situation where it's being asked from you.
So, thank you for that, sir.
Actually, oo nga, no. At first, no, sobrang funny, sobrang meme material nung pinapasagot ng kids sa parents nila yung mga modules, mga ganun. Tapos Gina mo yung parents, no. Pero, yun nga, at surface level, nakakatawa siya. Pero if you think about it deeply, ma-realize mo na manifestation siya na napakahirap talaga ma-assess ng learning in this setup. And speaking of assessing learning then, actually, as mentioned earlier, na in measuring one's productivity, kailangan mo tanong yung sarili mo if may natututunan ka. And that's a really tough question to answer in this setup nga talaga. And a lot of students actually ask that, including myself even, we ask ourselves kung may natututunan ba tayo. Kasi, nandito na tayo sa point na pagod na tayo. We are having a burnout. A very common term na umiikot ngayong lockdown, burnout, no? So, kayo po, sir, do you think na yung pag-file ng leave of absence or pagkuha ng leave of absence or like dropping out of school, is it an appropriate response to mental stress or like yung tinatawag natin na burnout? If so, kailan siya dapat kino-consider as an option?
All right. Sa akin, it's an option. But for me, that should be the last option. Okay? Because there are other interventions that can be done to fight, to address stress, and hindi lang yung leave of absence. But because you're asking about leave of absence, yun din ang sasagutin ko. Tulad ng sinabi ko kanina, it should be the last option. Pag yung tipong hindi na talaga mentally may problema na talaga at yung tipong kailangan mo ng magpa-therapy, kailangan mo ng magpagamot, no, kasi yung mental yung mental stress na dinaranas mo ay you are no longer capable of functioning normally. Yun ang gusto kong i-point out. Pag dumating ka sa punto na hindi ka na nakakapag-function normally, no, yung mga basic na ginagawa mo, as simple as eating, di ba, as simple as sleeping, di ka na makakain, di ka na makatulog, di ka na nga naliligo, mga signs yun na sobrang stress mo. How much more, no, to comply with academic requirements. So, talagang wala. At that point, yun siguro yung point na pwede ka nang mag-file of leave of absence. No? Even in our school, we recommend that to families, no, na talagang sa tingin namin ay hindi na magbe-benefit, no, na ipagpatuloy yung pag-aaral. But again, for me, last na option na yun. That's the extreme option that you can take. Because if you can in a way address your situation in the normal course of things, ay kung kaya mong gawin yun, ako i-suggest ko na gawin mo yun, no? Try to face your problems, your challenges head on. Doon lang pag di mo na talaga kaya na naapektuhan ng mental health mo, saka ka lang mag-leave of absence. What's my point? Kasi kung kakayanin mo yan, and I have seen a lot of students who went through challenges in academics but did not file for leave of absence, eventually when they were able to get out of the problem, they became stronger. No? It will build your character. Natutunan mong labanan yung problema sa kabila nung requirements mo na papasok ka sa school. Pag nagawa mo yun, you will come out a better person. So sa akin, last option yung leave of absence. Kung kaya pa namang labanan at harapin yung problema, harapin mo.
Maraming salamat po dun, sir. I think it's very timely also because there are a lot of people considering such option as well. And I think also important rin po, sir, na to not hesitate to ask for help from our friends.
Right.
And this is also tying back po to what you said po kanina na, reach out to people. And I think it's important that we remember this. And so it's nice also, sir, that we talked about the things that we can do while we're stressed out. But also, I think at the root of everything is our mindset. So
Right.
what is a good mindset that the student can have? And actually, not just students, sir, I think also educators, the people that surround these students. What's a good mindset to have to cope with the stress brought by remote learning?
Okay. I'm an eternal optimist, no? In the face of challenges, in the face of, negative, positive pa rin yung tingin ko sa buhay. I think that will help us a lot, no? Having a positive mindset. I don't know if you're familiar with Viktor Frankl, no? One of my favorite psychologists and philosophers is Viktor Frankl. He wrote the book, no? If you can find the book, maliit lang yan. Man's Search for Meaning ang pangalan. It's a very small book. Viktor Frankl was a victim of the Holocaust, no? So nakulong siya, nagkahiwalay sila ng kanyang asawa, yung family niya. As in, 'di ba, if you're familiar with the Holocaust during World War II, lahat na yata ng pwedeng negative na mangyari sa iyo ay nangyari sa buhay ni Viktor Frankl. Nasa concentration camp siya, nakulong siya, and it is the place where he wrote the book, no? And very basic doon sa kanya, what sustained him in spite of the challenges. Yun nga, number one is the positive mindset. Pangalawa, yung thinking na hindi naman to habang buhay eh. Hindi naman to walang katapusan, matatapos din ito. I think yun ang sinasabi niya sa book niya na those were the things that sustained him, no? So in like manner, dapat yung mindset natin ngayon ay hindi naman to habang buhay, di ba? If you will look into the histories of pandemics, 3-5 years, may mga mas matagal pa, pero hindi siya habang buhay, no? So let's have that mindset na hindi naman to habang buhay, hindi ito permanent na meron tayong COVID-19, lilipas din ito. And tulad din kay Viktor Frankl, what sustained him was looking forward to the things that he will do once he was out of the concentration camp. Yun ang ginawa niya, as in sinulat niya doon sa libro niya, ano yung mga gagawin niya pag nakalaya na siya. Imagine, di ba, nasa isang concentration camp ka, pero yung mindset niya, lalaya siya. Na probably a lot of the people in the concentration camps, ang mindset nun, mamamatay sila. Di ba? Naghahanda lang sila mamatay. Siya ay naghahanda siyang lumaya. And may kasabihan nga na, di ba, na you try to think of good and positive things because it will attract, no? You will attract positive things, no? So dapat positive yung mindset mo. Sa akin at this point, na marami tayong pinagdadaan ng problema because of the pandemic, having the mindset na positive ka, okay? In spite of the problems, that there will be something good that will come out of this, and that this is not permanent, okay? That this will pass. I think that will help us cope with the pandemic.
Thank you, sir. And gusto ko rin po na I think that's also a good mindset to have, that this too shall pass. And it's beautiful because in that book as well, you also sort of see how there is hope in hopelessness, and to see in the future, to see forwards in the future, and also to recollect what has been as well, and getting hope from that. And I think that's incredibly beautiful. So maraming salamat po, sir, for all your insights, especially about hope, about positivity, and especially now in the pandemic, because it's very important. This isn't something that we've gone through before. Sean, I'm not sure if you've gone through online classes as well before, but definitely something new.
Definitely. Syempre, actually, I think, yeah, it's the first time for a lot of us. Kaya medyo nakakabigla, especially nung nagsimula pa lang yung lockdown. It was very sudden. It has taken aback a lot of sectors talaga. And ang dami talagang naapektuhan, may it be their mental health or their economic status. Like, ang dami talagang naapektuhan. So, it is important na, while remembering these stuff, remembering na meron pa tayong pinagdadaanan, na merong ibang tao na are going through something worse, it is important na tandaan na, this day shall pass and everything will get better, especially if we do something about it. And it's very important to think about these things. And thank you, sir, for your insights. No, I think that caps off our discussion. So that's all of our questions in the table. So that's all of the discussion regarding mental health, especially now that we're in the middle of remote learning. So, ikaw ba, Zandy, what's your favorite part of the discussion? Like, ano yung pinaka-tumatak sa'yo?
I think, sir, I love that because as an introvert myself, I think it's also very nice that we talked about what extroverts can do, what introverts can do, the different things that, because when we cope with mental health situations, especially during online classes, it's very different, there's not one formula that we can follow. And I think that I loved how we have all these different perspectives. We see mental health on a spectrum, and the ways that we cope with this on a spectrum. So maraming salamat po sir tungkol doon. What about you, Sean? What's the one thing that stuck to your mind?
I think ito talaga like I like the way Sir started the discussion with telling us that stress is not bad, that stress is normal, no? Like normal ang stress na nararamdaman natin siya lahat, and like parang it was some sort of sense of reassurance na we're all feeling the same thing, we're all feeling the same normal feeling, no? Like kung nasa-stress ka man sa gobyerno natin ngayon, it's normal. Kung nasa-stress ka man sa remote learning natin ngayon, it's normal. And yun yung that thing, that saying that stress is normal is what kept me listening to him kasi he has very good insights talaga.
So, maraming salamat po, Mr. Carlon, for your time at sa isang makabuluhang diskusyon tungkol sa mental health sa gitna ng ating remote learning. So again, maraming salamat po, sir. And bilang pasasalamat sa inyong paglaan ng oras sa podcast na ito, ginagawad namin sa inyo ang isang sertipiko ng pagkilala na ito. This certificate of recognition is awarded to Mr. Carlo P. Carlon for sharing his invaluable expertise as a resource speaker for A Day at a Time, Mentally Coping with Online Classes, Episode 1 of the video podcast series entitled Pahinging, Pahinga, given this 24th day of March 2021 during the pre-recorded event via Zoom, signed by Sean Rom, Project Head, Russell Ko, External Committee Member, Gail Escalmado, Team Coordinator, and John Palayo, Team Coordinator. So maraming salamat po muli, sir. Maybe is there anything you'd like to promote, to plug in before we cap off this event?
All right. Kanina nabanggit dun sa introduction ko, no, na I founded last year a program, no. Ito I think kadugtong ito dun sa sinasabi mo na solidarity with other people, no. I founded Lend a Bike Project. I'm into biking kasi mahilig ako magbike. That's one of my passions. And yun nga, ang challenge ko siguro is try to find something like a passion that can help make a difference in the lives of people. Ngayon bumabalik na naman yung naghihigpit na naman, di ba, ang government natin. May maraming restrictions na naman. And part of it, sana hindi na bumalik last time yung nawala ng transportation. Pero yun, I've been trying to help frontliners and health workers get into their work by providing them bikes, lalo last year nung wala tayong transportation. But ever since, nag-evolve na yan from just providing, lending, nagbibigay na kami ngayon talaga ng mga bikes for people who are in need, to get to work or to go with their businesses, para kumita sila. So please check our Facebook page, Lend a Bike Project. Baka lang kasi may gustong tumulong doon sa aming proyekto na makatulong tayo sa ibang tao. So yan, maraming salamat.
Maraming salamat, sir.
Yan, check nyo yung Lend a Bike Project sa Facebook. So yan, maraming salamat po sa inyong pagdalo sa aming podcast, sir. It was very insightful. It was very helpful for a lot of students who are going through online classes right now. Especially, ayun nga, di ba? Like, hindi talaga pantay-pantay yung resources natin lahat. And we all need to have the time to take a breather or to unwind and step back and appreciate the time to rest. Have the time to rest. Tama, right? So,
And
Go.
Yes, and I'd like to magnify the idea and look for a passion, especially if you have the resources to do so and do it to help other people. And you know how, sir, Lend the Bike has helped so many people now, and I think that's one of the great things about finding your passion and doing something about it.
Ikaw ba, have you found a passion right now within over a year of
Over a
lockdown?
year of the pandemic. It's been, I think, I'm not sure for you, Sean and Sir Carlon, if how many months na since you've been to your universities, but for me personally, it's been a year, more than a year since I've stepped foot in UP. It's been a while, but I think also for the year, I found a passion in this, in hosting, in moderating, and it's very fun for me. It's a good way to interact with people. And sabi nga ni Sir kanina, to reach out to people as well. So I think that. What about you, Sean? Is there anything that you found?
Actually, yeah, ang dami kong natutunan. Like, tama yung sinabi ni Sir kanina na even with the limits of online learning, marami pa rin tayo natutunan. Given na I acknowledge naman din the privilege that we have to learn these things. No? So I learned more about society when I joined mass organizations. I learned more about event planning. I'll just like the people who organize this podcast. No? Kudos to Sean Rom, Russell, and to the team coordinators of Power Up. Just like them, natuto rin ako na mag-handle ng mga ganitong project na mag-handle na online na ganyan. So, feeling ko nga pa pagbalik natin ng face-to-face, marami sa ating mga event organizers or team leaders, project leaders ay kakapa-kapa pa rin sa mga face-to-face kasi baka hindi na tayo sanay sa na nasa labas na tayo ng four corners of our screens. Hindi na four corners of our classrooms, but four corners of our screens. So, ayun, I think it was very, I think I can consider myself naman passionate sa mga ganitong bagay. Kasi masaya naman talaga yung event planning and yung makilala mo yung um, society na inaaral ng mga mass organizations. So, ayun, again, I think that's where our first episode for Pahinging Pahinga caps off. Isang serye ng mental health video podcast na nagnanais na makatulong sa mga nakararanas ng mental stress ngayong pandemya.
Muli, maraming salamat po sa ating speaker today, Mr. Carlo P. Carlon. Maraming salamat po for your insights in this event. And ang Pahinging Pahinga ay inihahandog ng Power Up Team 6, isang inisyatibo ng Rise for Education, UP Diliman. This episode is also co-presented by Changemakers Philippines, Sinagdiwa Volunteers for Mental Health, and Mental Health Awareness. It was created in cooperation with We Mind PH, Alliance of Public Health Advocates, City of Mandaluyong Science High School Supreme Student Government, the Philippine School, Dubai Senior High School Student Council, Yugto Philippines, and Likas Bayan Organization Incorporated. And special thanks to Likas Aksyon ng Kabataan Organization.
So, thank you to our partners. Muli, ako si Sean Latore.
At ako si Zanella Baharias.
At pinapaalalahanan namin kayo na kahit sino ka man kapag pagod ka na, okay lang humingi ng pahinga.
Kita kits! Maraming salamat po muli sa ating speaker. Thank you.
Thank you.